Most people read Philippians 4 verse 19 the same way they read a cute inspirational quote on the internet. Something to briefly feel good about, then forget as soon as the bills pile up again. But the verse was never meant to be a soft emotional bandage. It was written as a declaration of how the universe actually works. A statement that reveals a blueprint for supply. One that operates with the precision of a quantum law. And if you stay with me, you're going to see why this one verse has the power to end money stress permanently. Before we go deep, make sure you like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment anytime a line hits you. Let's get into it. Philippians 4 verse 19 says, "And my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus." You've heard it. You've probably even repeated it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who quote this verse still live in constant financial anxiety. They hope for supply, they wish for abundance, but nothing changes. Not because the verse is wrong, but because they were never taught the mechanics behind it. They were taught the words, not the system. Imagine knowing the combination to a safe, but never turning the dial. You stand in front of unlimited resources, but the door never opens because nobody showed you how the mechanism works. That's exactly how most people approach Philippians 4 verse 19. They recite it, but they never activate it. And activation is the whole point. When Paul wrote this, he wasn't giving the Philippians a nice spiritual compliment. He wasn't saying, God's gonna give you everything because he's nice. No. He was describing a universal supply loop that the Philippians had already entered into. They weren't passive receivers, they were active participants. And that's the part nobody teaches. Let me tell you a quick story. A few months ago, someone messaged me saying, "I've declared Philippians 4 verse 19 for years, but I still feel like I'm always one emergency away from disaster." Maybe you can relate. They told me, "It feels like I'm quoting a verse that doesn't quote me back." And I said, "Because you're treating it like a promise, not a law." That's when everything clicked for them, and hopefully it's about to click for you. See, there's a huge difference between hope and alignment. Hope says, maybe God will supply. Alignment says, I've stepped into the frequency where supply becomes inevitable. The verse was never meant to run on hope. It runs on alignment. Think about the quantum field for a moment, the invisible ocean of energy that surrounds you, responds to you, and mirrors your internal state. In that field, nothing is random. Everything works through resonance. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are in vibrational agreement with. So when Paul says God supplies according to his riches in glory, he isn't talking about God looking down from heaven and dropping blessings like random gifts. He's describing a system where you align with a state of consciousness that already contains everything you need. A realm where lack simply cannot exist. But here's where it gets even deeper. In the original context, Paul was writing to the Philippians because they had been consistently giving, supporting, and pouring into his mission. They weren't just hopeful believers, they were active aligners. They had created a flow. In quantum terms, you could say they had opened a channel. They initiated a frequency exchange. And within that frequency, supply wasn't a possibility, it was a guarantee. Let that sink in. Supply shows up not because you hope for it, but because you've aligned with the energy that generates it. This is why so many people pray for financial breakthrough but stay stuck in the same cycle. They're trying to separate spiritual supply from spiritual alignment. They want the overflow without the frequency shift. They want the harvest without planting the resonance. And that's not how the universe works, biblically or scientifically. If you're still watching right now, hit that like button so this message reaches more people. And in the comments, Let me know if you've ever felt that tension between believing in abundance and experiencing scarcity. You're not alone. And the good news is, clarity is coming. Let's go deeper into the mechanics. In quantum physics, there's a principle called the observer effect, the idea that what you focus on, you energize. What you expect, you attract into form. This is exactly why Jesus constantly said, "According to your faith, be it unto you." Not according to your wishes, not according to your need, but according to your faith, your expectation, your internal vibrational pattern. Philippians 4 verse 19 is not activated by need. It's triggered by alignment. And alignment happens through 3 internal shifts. The first shift is the state of certainty, not hope, not wishing. Certainty. The Philippians didn't give out of fear, or duty, or religious pressure. They gave because they were certain the universe they were participating in mirrored generosity back to them. Their giving wasn't a loss, it was resonance. Here's a wild truth. The quantum field doesn't respond to desperation. Desperation vibrates at lack. It attracts more lack. But certainty vibrates at abundance, and abundance is reflected back. The second shift is participation. You cannot expect to live in overflow while your internal story is still, "There's never enough." You align through what you do, what you believe, and what you embody. Giving isn't about money, it's about identity. It's a declaration that says, "I am not a victim of scarcity." Every act of generosity breaks the mental pattern of lack. Every time you release something, you reinforce the truth that you live in an abundant universe, not a finite one. If you're getting something from this, share the video with someone who needs this message. You never know whose entire worldview could shift with one insight. The third shift is receiving, not passively, but consciously. The Philippians didn't just give. They lived in the expectation that what they activated would return in a multiplied way. And that mindset is the missing link for most people. They give with fear. They give with insecurity. They give hoping their giving will prove something to God. But the Philippians gave with awareness. That's why Paul said their gift was a fragrant offering. In other words, it wasn't about the action, but the frequency behind the action. Let me say something you may have never heard in church. Abundance is not about how spiritual you are, it's about the frequency you're operating from. You can pray all day, but if your internal state is wired into scarcity, the universe will keep mirroring scarcity back to you. Not as punishment, just as resonance. This is why Philippians 4 verse 19 isn't a cute promise. It's a description of a quantum law. "And my God shall supply all your needs." That's the effect. According to his riches in glory. That's the frequency. In Christ Jesus. That's the state of consciousness. Christ consciousness is not a religious label. It's a state of unity, alignment, abundance, and identity rooted in the infinite, not the limited. Let me give you a practical way to activate this. Think of the quantum field like a giant echo chamber. Whatever signal you send out, you get back amplified. If you send out fear, you get fear's echo. If you send out generosity, you get generosity's echo. If you send out trust, you get trust's echo. The universe multiplies whatever you vibrate. So when Paul says God supplies according to his riches, he's describing the highest possible frequency of supply, the infinite source field. Not human effort. Not economic conditions. Not your job. The supply Paul speaks of is not even connected to your circumstances. It flows through them, not from them. Let me pause and ask you something. What if the reason you felt blocked isn't because supply is missing, but because your alignment has been disrupted? What if the universe has been mirroring your internal story all along, And all that's needed is a shift in vibrational identity. One of my favorite examples comes from someone who commented under a previous video. They said they were always waiting for money to show up from somewhere. But that mindset kept them in a vibrational state of waiting. Waiting is not receiving. Waiting is postponement. And life mirrored that back. The moment they shifted from waiting to expecting, small opportunities began appearing everywhere. Not miracles out of nowhere, but doors opening they never noticed before. Here's the part most people overlook. Supply rarely falls from the sky. It usually arrives through connections, creativity, opportunities, decisions, and synchronicities that match your new vibrational pattern. When alignment shifts, reality rearranges. That's quantum. And that's biblical. Let's dig into something even deeper. The phrase, His riches in glory. The word glory in the original language doesn't mean shining light. It means weight, fullness, substance. In modern terms, you could say it means density, something real, something solid, something you can count on. So when Paul says God supplies, according to His riches in glory, he's saying the supply comes from the densest, most certain, most abundant form of reality. In quantum language, it comes from the highest frequency field. And that's why the promise is so radical. Paul isn't saying, God might supply. He's saying, when you align with the field of abundance, supply becomes automatic. Let's flip this into application, something you can do today. First, identify the scarcity stories still running your life. Thoughts like, it's too hard, I'm always behind, I never have enough. These aren't just thoughts. They are frequencies. And frequencies shape outcomes. Second, observe where you're giving from. Not what you're giving, where you're giving from internally. Is it fear, obligation, or identity? Third, shift into expectation. Expect supply the way you expect gravity to work. You never doubt gravity. You never question whether the ground will hold you. You simply trust it. That is how Philippians 4 verse 19 was meant to be lived, not as a fragile hope, but as a law. If you've gotten value from this message, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. It helps the channel, but it also keeps this kind of teaching circulating. As we start landing this plane, let me leave you with this thought. What if you stopped trying to get God to supply your needs, and instead learned to enter the frequency where supply already exists? What if your entire financial life could shift not by working harder, but by aligning deeper? What if the stress you carry is not a sign of lack, but a sign that you're operating from a lower frequency than the abundance that belongs to you? Paul didn't say God will supply some needs. He said all. And he didn't say God supplies according to your effort. He said according to His riches. That means the supply that flows to you isn't limited by what you have, but by what you align with. So the question now is simple. Are you aligned with lack or aligned with abundance? Because the universe is already mirroring your answer. Let that be your work this week. Not striving, not stressing, but aligning. The supply is already here. The field is already full. The only thing left is for you to tune into the frequency where what belongs to you finally arrives.